Again. Let me share my screen here so you all know where we are. We are actually starting the last chapter of the Spirit's book, which is chapter 2 of book 4. So for the 5th or 6th time, we are finishing the Spirit's book, and then we'll start all over again.
Right.
But we still have some questions to go through here. We are at question 958, and there is 1019 questions, so we still have a good 60 questions to go through. So the chapter 2 of book 4. Book 4 is the last book of the Spirit's book, that talks about earthly joys and sorrows and future joys and sorrows. So we discussed in the past few weeks earthly joys and sorrows, which is joys and sorrows that happens when we are here incarnated in a physical body. And future joys and sorrows are joys and sorrows that await us in the spiritual world. So we are going to discuss here what happens when we go back to the spiritual world, and rewards, joys, sorrows, rewards, atonements, and repentance. And we end up, the Spirit's book end up very appropriately with heaven, hell, and purgatory, that we have just finished studying the whole book about heaven and hell, but we are going to finish the Spirit's book with it also. So first item is Nothingness, Future Life. Paco, take over.
Okay, thank you. Why do human beings have an instinctive power of nothingness? Because there's no such thing as nothingness. From where do we derive the instinctive sense of a future life? We already told you. The spirit knows everything before reincarnation, and the soul retains a vague memory of what it knew in its spirit state. Human beings have always been preoccupied with the question of a life after death, and this is completely natural. Whatever importance they may attach to this life, they cannot help but wonder about the future. Since this life is brief and may be cut short at any moment, what becomes of them after death? The question is a serious one because it refers to eternity and not just a few years. The person who is about to spend many years in a foreign country tries to determine what his or her position will be there beforehand. In that vein, how can we not wonder what our state will be when we leave our present life, since it will be forever? The idea of reduction to nothingness is averse to reasoning. The most negligent person about to leave this life wonders what is going to become of him or her, and involuntarily hopes for something more. To believe in God without believing in a future life is illogical. The intuition of a better life lies in every human being's inner consciousness. God cannot have placed it there without a reason. The concept of a spiritual life implies the preservation of our individuality after death. What is the point of surviving the body if our moral essence is lost in the ocean of infinity? Such a result is the same as reduction to nothingness. Tell me in English now.
So, let's tell you in English now. So when we talk about future life, or as they say here, Kardec as the Spirit's nothingness, we know that if we study ancient civilizations or we study the less evolved civilizations on Earth, we will find in all of them an instinct or a belief that there is an afterlife. So where does it come from? Obviously, as we understand and study Spiritism, it comes from the vague idea or vague memory that we have of our time in the spiritual world. So when we come back to a new incarnation, we bring with us the vague notion that there is something else. So you will find that all those that believe in that there is nothing after the physical life, or those that believe that everything ends with the end of the physical life, they believe in that coming to a rational thought. It's not an instinctive thought. It's a rational thought that they reflect, and either they don't care or they really rationalize that, you look at what religions tell us, you look at the injustice of the world, and you come to the conclusion that it is not possible that there is a God or that there is a superior being, because God wouldn't allow all these injustices and all this sort of thing. So all this is rationalization of what we are going through in this physical life. But as Kardec points very well here in the comments, human beings have always been preoccupied with the question of life after death. Now, many of us pay little attention or do not focus on it because we are concerned with the present, we are concerned with what we need to do to survive, and we leave these preoccupations for a later date. But I don't know who told me one day, I think maybe it was Elmo. Elmo's not here today, but maybe it was him that told me that on your way to an operating room, there is no one that is an atheist. Everyone believes that there is something else because that's their hope. So, in the end, when we are in danger, we go back to our instinctive belief that there is something after death. Now, from when we think there is something after death to where we start looking for answers and struggling to find reasonable answers for those that are more rational and more earthly focused on our thing, materialistic in a sense, it is hard because the answers that Spiritism gives us are very comforting and very illuminating. But Spiritism is not out there. You have to know, if you are not in a place where Spiritism is widespread, like, for instance, Brazil, you have to look for different things, and you start looking on the internet and you find all sorts of crazy things, less crazy things, more rational things, and you start looking at different religions, and you find different versions of the afterlife, and you find religions that don't even talk about afterlife. So for those that are really serious in pursuing the answers, they will find a lot of challenges. But again, going back to what Kardec says here, when you are planning to move abroad, and many of us here have moved abroad, you plan ahead. You try to find more, you understand better about the place that you are moving to, the customs, what is common there, what is not, what likely are going to be your difficulties, besides language, if you go to a country with a different language, but you at least do some research. There are people that do more, there are people that do less. So why shouldn't we look for answers on something that will happen to all of us? Because we may be born and live our whole life in a place, but we definitely, our physical body is going to die, and we are going back to the spiritual world. So Kardec continues here that the idea of reduction to nothingness is averse to reasoning. So if we start reasoning and we have a little bit of curiosity, and we research a little bit internet and other options, we will find that there is different beliefs, and everywhere there are different discussions about life after death. So it stands to reason that if we want to follow the majority, and we think that this is, if the majority thinks that there is life after death, we have at least to investigate better. We have to try to find answers. And Kardec says here, to believe in God without believing in a future life is illogical. And everybody that believes in God believes that in the survival of the soul, I believe. So it is in our inner conscience, the idea and the intuition of a future beyond the death of the physical body. And he ends up by saying that, of course, the concept of spiritual life implies the preservation of our individuality, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. So we live this whole life, and then we are going back to the spiritual world, and are we going to be lost in the ocean of infinity? So we are all going back to the same universal soup or something like that. That would mean the same as a reduction to nothingness. And I fully agree with the comment by Kardec. Okay, questions, comments? Anyone? No one? Okay, we go to a different subject here. So everybody here is comfortable with future life, of course, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So let's talk about the intuition of future joys and sorrows.
Okay. From where does the belief in future pains and rewards originate? It is an intuition of the reality imparted to each person by the spirit incarnated in them. Know this well. It is not in vain that this inner voice speaks to you, and you are wrong in ignoring it. If you thought of this enough and more often, you would be better off.
Okay, so
yeah, explain that, because I'm kind of lost there.
Yeah, so we all those that believe in the survival of the soul believe that there is something after death, and in after death some of us believe that we are going to find ourselves in a better place. Some of those are afraid of where we're going to find ourselves, and a lot of people think that there are consequences for our actions here in the physical world, that we'll have to face these consequences in going back to the spiritual world, meaning that's where it comes the future pains and rewards. So the belief in future pains and rewards. And the spirits are telling us, actually, we bring this in our intuition, because we have been going through this for incarnations and discarnations, endless incarnations and discarnations. We are facing consequences of our past actions. We are facing pains and rewards when we are back in the spiritual world. So even if we forget all of this, something remains there. There is an intuition of something that happened in the past. And one clear example of that is the traumas that many people have that they cannot find any explanation. So you have those that are afraid of heights, those that are afraid of going outside, and all those other traumas that sometimes only
phobias, the phobias, yeah.
The phobias, yes. So sometimes only a regression to a past life can help us heal those cases. But why we have those phobias, if not something that it is in our subconscious referring to a previous existence? So what the spirits tell us here is, do not ignore it. You know, if your inner voice speaks to you and it brings, so our intuition, our senses bring to us, and if we pay more attention to it and analyze it, we are going to find answers. We are going to find explanations many times, maybe not. But if we look at ourselves and we analyze ourselves, and that's why we have different ways. You have psychology, you have other inner transformation studies that can help us overcome our difficulties and help us deal with our past. So intuitively, we have this idea that that in the future we will have consequences, either of pains or of rewards for our actions of today. And there is a lot of people that decides to believe that there is nothing in the future, that there is no rewards or punishment, because they know they're not acting in the proper way. And those that follow religion, in the end, different religions have different explanations of pains and rewards on the afterlife, and the Catholic Church talks to us about heaven, hell, and purgatory that we're going to study later in this chapter, which is really pains and rewards, right? If you are good, you go to heaven. It's a reward. If you are bad, you go to hell. So you are going to be in endless pain. And if you're not one or not the other, which is they had to find a solution for those that are not very good or not very bad, they place them in purgatory, where they will wait the final judgment, which we all know that it's figurative all, because it's not really what happens, but that's the idea that the religions teach us. So, okay, Paco, got it?
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
Anyone? Any other comments, questions? No. Okay.
Very good. Very good. What is the predominant feeling when one is dying? Is it doubt, fear, or hope? Doubt for the skeptical, fear for the guilty, and hope for the virtuous. I love that. How can
Yes. No. Let's talk. Yeah. Let's talk about
beautiful.
This one, because a very short Q&A,
Beautiful,
but very profound, because
yes.
Really, when we are dying, we have three types, as they say here, right? We have the skepticals that in the end, as we discussed a little bit earlier, when you are in danger, you start questioning everything, and you start doubting if all the known belief that you had throughout your life is the reality, or if there will be something else that you'll find on the other side. Now, if you have a guilty conscience, what you are going to have is a mixture of hope that there is nothing, and fear if there is something. because you know that if there is something after and you are guilty, you have a guilty conscience, you are going to have to face the consequences. And those that led a peaceful and productive life will have and believe in the survival of the soul, will have hope and resignation and acceptance to the natural circle of life, going back to the spiritual world. They hope they will find their loved ones, they will find peace, they will find consolation, and that's normally what they end up finding actually. So a lot of one phrase that talks a lot about those that are going back to the spiritual world, and of course here these are the cases of people that are aware that they are approaching death. When you have that sudden death experiences, people that die of sudden in a sudden form, you don't have time to go through these thoughts, and you end up having these thoughts when you wake up on the other side, not clearly understanding where you are, what happened to you. Many of those think that they are not dead, because especially those that believe that life ends after the death of the physical body. Those that have a guilty conscience will find themselves in not so nice places, surrounded by those accusing them, and that's not a very pleasant experience. And those that are virtues are going to find themselves helped and assisted by the spiritual benefactors, by the familiar spirits, and all those that are in this process of assisting the discarnation process. Okay? Any questions?
That's a beautiful statement, isn't it?
It is. I like it.
Yes.
I like it very much, because
I love it.
Covers all the different aspects, right?
Yes, I agree. How can skeptics exist, considering that the soul imparts the sense of spirituality to all? Wow, very good. There are few skeptics, don't you think? Many of those who feign skepticism during life out of pride are much less skeptical when they die. The quality of our future life depends on our actions. Reason, supported by a sense of justice, tell us that the good and the bad are not mistaken in our ultimate sharing of happiness. God would not allow some people to obtain joy effortlessly, while others obtain it only through much exertion. Our faith in God's justice and goodness, as evidenced by the wisdom of God's laws, forbids us to believe that the good and the bad hold the same place before God. Conversely, there's no doubt that eventually the good are rewarded and the bad atone for the good and evil they have done. From an innate sense of justice, we derive our instinct of future reward.
Okay, so we discussed a little bit about that, right? How can skeptics exist, considering that the soul imparts the sense of spirituality to all? So we talked about it in the beginning when we said that to become a skeptic, you need to rationalize, and you need to reach a conclusion, because we all bring a sense of spirituality with us. Now, we're going to talk a lot in the next few questions about God. So let us just remind ourselves about God's perfect laws. So God's laws are perfect, are just, are benevolent, and are equal to all. So you cannot infringe God's law without facing consequences. But it's not God that punishes, it's the following or not following of God's law that will cause the consequences for ourselves of our actions. So when Kardec says here again, God would not allow some people to obtain joy effortlessly, it's a reminder that God's law is perfect, natural law is perfect, so the law would not allow some people to obtain joy effortless, while others have to obtain it through much exertion. So we need to work to achieve progress. That's the natural law. And we study law of progress in book 3, one of the different laws, moral laws that we studied. So, of course, as Julio explained so well to us a couple of times, for Kardec to write in the middle of the 19th century, in a different way that everybody was used to, meaning God rewards, God punishes, God this and God that, would be very hard, because he was already bringing so much information that he had to live what was believed in that time, a lot of what was believed in that time in the text, so we could have a better understanding at that time. So as we evolve and we learn more and we understand God's natural laws and we understand the perfection of God's law, is when we start analyzing. If the law is perfect, then God's there just to supervise and to continue creating and making us aware as new spirits are created of the time of the natural laws. So the natural laws are there. They are not changeable, because if you can change them, it's because they are not perfect, and as they are perfect, they cannot be changed. So all this to talk a little bit about God, because we're going to talk about God in the next item, but a little bit on this one, talking a little bit about skepticism again. So nowadays, the latest polls say that here in the United States, more than 80% of people believe are spiritual in one way or another, follow some religion, follow some spirituality, that less than 20%, actually much less than 20% are atheists. The latest numbers I read and I saw somewhere was in the region of 5 to 6%. Europe is a little bit bigger because of the 2 world wars and all the destruction. There are a larger number of non-believers, of materialists. Materialists here in the sense that do not believe in anything after the death of the physical body. You can call atheists or what, but those that do not have spirituality. And again, one statistic that I like very much to point out, that talks about how we have spirituality in all of us. In this former Soviet Union, actual Russia, that for 70 years abolished religion and all types of religiosity. So you had to follow your religion hidden in Russia or in the Soviet Union first for 70 years until the fall of the Berlin Wall. How many people are atheists or do not have any spirituality? More or less the same number as the United States. So you see that you can try to repress spirituality, but our inner sense, our inner instinct brings it back to all of us. And what happens in these countries that try to oppress spirituality is that they end up being spiritual in one way or another. You have China trying to control religion and to prevent it from to expand. And according to what I read latest statistics, like 15% of the population in China does not believe in anything spiritual, which is, 85% believe. It's incredible, right? Anyway, so that only proves what the spirits and Kardec are telling us, that the soul imparts the sense of spirituality in all of us. Okay? Questions, comments? And
so
everybody's
that
very
sense,
quiet. Yes, go ahead, Paco.
yeah. So I can say that that sense of spirituality, of life after death, it's basically like a seed already planted in the spirit. It's there.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then those who reject that innate, I don't know, feeling, emotion, tendency, proclivity, are actually against that natural flow. But with the going against that natural flow, where does it come from? From the ego, you understand, the rejection of that flow.
Yes.
Where does it
Where
emerge?
does it come from?
Where does it originate?
It comes from trying to rationalize things, right? And sometimes from ego, yes, thinking that it's not possible that there is something above us. That if there is something above us, where is justice? And you start rationalizing that, right? So for those that look at the situation of the world, see so much injustice, do not find any answers that please them in their searches, or do not even bother to look for. So they decide consciously, you know what, it's better if I say to myself I don't believe in anything, and I start, because I don't think any of these makes sense that I read out there. And again, I understand that kind of reasoning, because before being a spiritist, I had pretty much that reasoning myself. I couldn't find any decent answers in any of the religions, and I decided that nothing really was worth my time. Yeah, so I understand where they come from, but it, again, is a rationalization. It is us looking for answers and not finding, and deciding that because we cannot find answers, then there must be nothing.
Yeah, got it. Yeah. It's like an abuse of logic. Yes.
Yeah, because in the end, especially nowadays, right, when you have so much information, so much availability of information, you just start you just start doing research. And if you do research in a logic way, not start believing in everything that you read, but you start analyzing what you find out there, you eventually are going to find the very reasonable answers in all religions. A lot of things that you're not going to agree, but a lot of things that make sense. And you find the same things in many of them, right? You'll find some things, a lot of things in Spiritism you'll find in the Eastern religions. You'll find a lot of things in Spiritism, that the truths of Spiritism you'll find in the Catholic Church, you'll find in Judaism, you find in the Muslim religion. So it's just a matter of separating what you find everywhere, because the truth is found everywhere, and what's particular to each belief or sect, and putting aside what is particular to each one. Because if A religion tells you that you cannot eat meat, that the cow is sacred. That's what some religious people in India believe. It's only them, right? Others do not believe in that. So you start separating what is common to everybody and what is a characteristic of each belief, and you end up with a pretty decent spiritual truth in the end, if you are really wishing to learn and search for it. Now, if you don't care and you prefer to say, nothing of this makes sense, so I rather not believe in anything. And if there is something, like I heard people say, if there is something after, I'll do after. It is an option, right?
Exactly. Very good.
And so yes, and of course there is. When we talk about, there is a difference between being religious and being spiritualist, right? We consider spiritualists all those that believe in the afterlife, in life, that there is something more than the physical body. You don't need to be affiliated to any religion, and you don't need to be religious. You are a spiritualist if you believe that there is something else beyond the physical life. But, and there are many people in the world, especially today, the number is growing more and more, that are not affiliated to any religion, but have their own beliefs and have their own understanding of what happens in the spiritual life. And that's, in my opinion, that number will continue to grow as long as religions don't provide the right answers, the right comfort. If religions continue answering questions to this is secret, or this is a dogma, or this something like that, they are going to continue losing people to spiritualism in a broader sense. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other one? Renato, you there? No? Or you just turn it on just to listen?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was thinking here. I was trying to answer, but since you asked me, I'm gonna ask you. Yeah, because I was thinking here on the future joys, right, and sorrows, and you are the one that always say that we are always evolving, even if small.
It's not me that says that. It's Spiritism.
Yeah, I mean, Spiritism. And I was thinking, sometimes you hear the spirits suffering a lot when they get to the other side, and they not necessarily had all that suffering while they were incarnate. So if you are evolving, if you are getting better, and if you are making yourself better, that suffering that that we that we see, that we hear in the books and everything, it's the way that we read the situation, the way that they interpret the situation, or because the law cannot be wrong.
I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about.
I'm saying that because the chapter is the future sorrow, joys and sorrows, right? What's gonna happen
Yes.
when we disincarnate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that we are always evolving. So if you're always evolving, making yourself better, so if you're in a position today, so when you go to the spiritual realm, theoretically, you keep that or you're getting better, right? You're evolving. But
Yes.
some people, when they get to the other side, they go through a lot of suffering and, trouble and everything. And it looks like it's worse than they were when they were incarnate.
It can be, Renato, it can be part of the process of evolvement, the realization of the things that you have done wrong in the past, that before, because of your lack of evolution, you had no realization of that, no conscience of of your behavior. So the more we evolve and the more we become aware of our imperfections and we come in contact with our past mistakes, we may feel guiltier than we were before. So that may be the reason, but in a sense, what you were saying here, that the future sorrows normally are consequence of things that we are doing wrong and that are creating consequences for us that we have to face the consequences. So the suffering is the struggle to go through the consequences of those wrong actions that we have done. I don't know if it's exactly what you were looking for here.
Well, so you're saying the only way the suffering is because once I'm in the spiritual realm, I have more awareness of everything, and that's why the suffering, kicks in. Because here, with all the flesh and everything, I'm not aware of everything, so I can do all the crazy that I do and still be quote unquote happy.
It can be. It can be that when you go back to the spiritual world, you look back in your previous incarnation, in this most recent one, and you look at the missed opportunities that you had, and it can make you suffer. It can make you struggle to accept the reality of you of you having wasted your incarnation. But again, it's a personal thing, and actually what we should have is an understanding that we are imperfect spirits, that we are progressing, and that we are going to make mistakes. So learning from our mistakes and dealing with the consequence of our mistakes should be a healthy exercise, not an exercise of struggle. But again, it's each person deals with the problems differently, right? So when we go back to the spiritual world, yes, we have the veil of forgetfulness is lifted in a sense, meaning that we are going to remember things that we were not able to remember when we were incarnated. Not exactly all things from previous existences, but it's a little bit more ample, the remembrance that we have from ourselves as a spirit in our journey. So we may find some struggles to deal with things that we were not aware here in the incarnation.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so let's talk about God's intervention.
Intervention of God in rewards and atonements. Is God personally concerned with each person? Is God not too great and we're not too small for each individual to be of any importance to the Creator? God is concerned with all creation, no matter how small they may be. Nothing is too small or insignificant for God's goodness.
Okay, so here, the
like
problem with the question is that Kardec is trying to personalize God, right? Which is the problem of all of us throughout our evolution. We humanize God because we don't understand God. We cannot conceive God as a creator of the universe and understand what it means. So it's difficult for us when we try to answer that question, is God personally concerned with each person, is because we think, how can one person be concerned with each person, and let's talk only about 8 billion incarnated. How can one person understand the problems of 8 billion people at the same time? Because we have a misconception of God, or a lack of full understanding God. Because as the creation is perfect, so God is concerned. It's not the right word. God is aware of everything that happens in the universe. But that is, I think, as much as we can try to understand, as we try to understand God, because God is, it's really beyond our full understanding. It's beyond our capacity to understand. I don't think we have words to describe God. The spirits try here with the limitation of our own vocabulary, that when they say that God is concerned with all of creation, no matter how small they may be. So it extends to everything. So God is also concerned with the little plant that you have in your garden. It's, again, concern is not the right word, but everything follows the natural laws. So God is everywhere, because the creation is everywhere. And because the creation is everywhere and God is the creator, God is everywhere. But the word concerned is what we are going to misinterpret when we relate to God. So the spirits, they end up saying nothing is too small or insignificant for God's goodness. And that's a little bit more of an explanation of to try to help us understand the greatness of God. But I think we are limited in understanding it. And actually, when you see Julio's presentation on the book Genesis, he talks about how little is talked about God in the 5 books of the codification. And we study the God in the beginning of Genesis, we study God in the first chapter of the Spirit's book, but we don't go much deeper because we don't have the capacity. The spirits don't have the words to explain. We don't have the capacity to understand. So we have to be very basic on the notions of God and how God relates to us.
It is quite interesting that the question posits the word concern, yet the answer, if you look at it, is goodness. Do you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So he's emphasizing the goodness rather than so much concern. Yeah.
In truth, I forgot to look at the original in French, but I think that I don't think there is a mistake in the translation there. I think that's what the word they used in the original also. But again, you can use concern for in the sense that God is aware and it's part of everything and everywhere. In that sense, that you can say that God is concerned, but God is not concerned in the sense that he's worried or preoccupied.
Hey, João.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand a parallel here, because the word concern, because we need to describe, we need to put into words in order to at least have an idea of God or whatever we're talking. But if we expand a little bit and not be concerned about words, and think about the way how we interact with the creation, and each one of us will interpret that interaction in a certain way, and then for us to understand, we name that interpretation as a fear, love, excitement, or whatever. But the way we feel could you say that that feeling, I'm calling that as a feeling because we need to describe in order to understand, that is something that it comes from God? That's something that has come from, even though we name it whatever way we would name, the way we feel, that's something that comes from God.
Everything comes from God, right?
Not the translation, but because we are talking, because this question here talks about if God is concerned or not, and they say he's concerned with all the
actually,
creation.
why you were asking, I went to look at the original in French, and it's really not concerned that it's said there. It's personally, it's more like involved, personally, part of each person in that sense, personally involved with each person. Which the concern is not very far from the original, but it's not exactly that. But it's, as we are all God's creation, everything that we do, that we are, that we act is a consequence of the creation, right? There's nothing, we cannot escape from creation. So everything that we do or think of or don't do has some of God in it, has God in it, in a sense. I don't know if...
because it was nice you say that, because what I'm trying to get is right now is, so let's say we call love, we call fear, we call whatever, but that's our interpretation of something that happens to us interacting with creation. But we always say here, we always study that God has nothing of that. There's no, because all we describe is human things, and God has no human things. But if we take out the words of and just look at as the way we behave interacting, so that means that God also has all those quote unquote feelings.
You are trying to understand God and interpret God, and I don't think we can. We when we try to humanize God, it makes everything more difficult for us to describe it. So I don't know if I have an answer that will satisfy you. To be very honest, I think that what we can, the more and more we understand God as the creator and as perfect, and the natural laws as perfect, and that there is no derogation of the natural law, that everything that happens is within the natural law, even the mistakes that we make are part of the natural law in the sense that will create consequences. I think the better we are preparing ourselves to one day understand God, that I think we are thousands of incarnations away. But I don't think we can go any much further than that. I don't know. I got has anything to. Yeah.
No, this is a philosophical subject, because because we always wondering, because if we feel love and we love God, we try to imagine that God feels the same way towards us because we are His creations. But we call love, and love is a human word. That's why I try to get out of words, and the only word I used was the feeling, or my interaction of creation. So to understand if this is a mutual thing, that's why.
If God created, if love exists, God created love, right? In any definition that you want to. And if you go further in meaning that evil does not exist, what exists is the absence of goodness. Darkness does not exist. What exists is the absence of light. So the creations of God that exist, all of them, love, light, goodness, they are attributes of the divinity also, right? but that's the logical conclusion that we get to, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? It's an interesting subject, and we are going to get back next week because we still have some questions on this. And the next question is quite a long one. So what we're going to do is leave it for next week. Talks again about God's law and if God is concerned with each of our actions and the natural laws. But we have 3 minutes left. Fabio just posted on the chat if anyone wants to read the original question in French that says, does God occupies it personally of each man? Occupies itself personally. Take care, not so much concern, but takes care. Yeah, that's more of the the more correct translation is God personally takes care of each person, of each spirit, let's say, and God takes care personally of everything in the creation, right? Because it's God's creation. Okay.
Yeah, I was just a thought crossed my mind. Because we are created at the image of the Creator. So I was thinking, when you put an alarm clock and go to sleep, you don't worry about, because you know that the alarm clock will wake you up in the next day. So God create all the laws, everything perfect.
Exactly.
So he doesn't have to worry about us because he knows that everything will be fine.
We are all going to be perfected spirits, right? So, and that's according to the natural law. So in that sense, yes, God knows that we are all going to reach perfection. So, and as God is eternal and infinite, the notion of time is our notion. It's not God's notion, right? It doesn't matter how long it takes. We're going to get there. So, anyway. So, before we close, I would like to invite you all to stay for the second part of our studies because as you can see, Elmo is not here. So we are going to have a special guest conducting the second part. Jussara is going to take care of it. She's going to direct the study of the Medium's book. So if you miss Jussara, you haven't been in her meetings, she will be here sharing her knowledge with you all. And because I have to leave, because I have to give a lecture to another Spiritist center, I was invited. So, but you have the privilege to stay with Jussara for the second part, to where we are going to study the Medium's book. So I'm telling you in advance, for those that normally leave after the first part, if you want to stay for the second part, to learn a little bit from Jussara, you are welcome to stay, okay? So this Saturday, the lecture that we have on the United States Spiritist Federation is a lecture by our friend Alex Alves from Orlando. He's the general coordinator of Plenitude Spiritist Society in Kissimmee, Florida. And he's going to talk about restart and rebuild, which is something that we all have to go through in these difficult times of the pandemic, right? So join us Saturday, 11 a.m. on the United States Spiritist Federation YouTube and Facebook, okay? And what else? For those that are coming for the first time here, maybe a couple of you, we started a new meeting on Mondays at 7:30. It's a study. It's not a study. It's a spiritual assistance meeting with a reading of the Gospel according to Spiritism, a comment, and a prayer meditation. It's a 30-minute session that we started last week. the login instructions are the same to all of our studies meetings. And a couple of things more. This Sunday, we are going to, this is the third Sunday of the month, so we'll be studying On the Way to the Light with Julio. And next Sunday, Elmo is going to be presenting a lecture. We will continue with Fundamentals of Mediumship. He's going to present physical effects, a lecture on physical effects, mediumship of physical effects. Okay? Thank you all for joining. I'm going to ask Carol to do our final prayer.
Sure. Infinite Creator, Supreme Intelligence, all goodness and grace, we are grateful to be together this evening for the study of the Spirit's book. We are grateful for the unity that we have created as a group, and we are grateful for the teachings that we have received. We are thankful to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, and the helpers who are providing a great deal of information, a great deal of hope, of courage, and inspiration for all of us. We are grateful for their presence. And as we know, we are eternal spirits. We believe in the continuity of life, and we know that after we leave this world, after we leave a physical body, we will continue on in the spiritual world. We know that each day we are creating that new life as we live in accordance to the spiritual laws. As we do good, as we try to improve ourselves, we will create more future joys for ourselves rather than sorrows. It is up to us. There may be doubt, there may be fear or hope. It depends on us. Remember that the law of cause and consequence is always in effect. This relates to the universal laws. We pray that each one of us can take stock of our lives. May we affiliate with the higher path in life, with the goodness, with the grace, doing our part, sharing our knowledge, and being of service throughout the day, throughout the week, and throughout the year. We close this portion of the meeting now, and we humbly ask for safety and protection for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our friends and co-workers. May we go forth as beacons of light, receiving the love and light of Christ within us. Go forth now in peace. Go forth now as we close. So be it.